15th through Thursday, September 18th. We're still in the powerful 2 weeks eclipse window between the lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 7th and the solar eclipse in Virgo that will occur on the 21st of September. That means that this is a busy time. For many, there will be a lot of shifting, a lot of change, the old coming out and the new coming in during these 2 weeks. Eclipses signify a time of realignment with our path, kind of ready or not. And this week, September 15th through 18th, we also have a powerful Mars-Chiron opposition with a Venus aspect to contend with. Actually, I shouldn't say it that way. This transit offers a lot of peace if we can find it. So let's get into this on our chart here. I want to start by labeling the transit that I'm going to be talking about today. I like to put this up on the chart in case you are learning astrology and you enjoy following along with that. My hope is that this is helpful. And if you just enjoy listening to the astrology, my hope is that these reports work for you too. That's always my intention, for it to work wherever you are in your journey with astrology. So we have Mars here. Mars is in Libra. And this is a chart for September 15th. I regulated it for Aries in the first house, just for clarity, as I usually do. So we have Mars here in the 7th house in Libra. House doesn't matter, but it's in Libra. And then we have Chiron over here in Aries, toward the end of Aries. Chiron has been working through Aries since 2018. This is a fairly slow-moving planet, point in the sky. We call everything in astrology a planet or a point. So, and then we have Venus here in Leo. I like Venus and Leo. Flirty, fun, Venus and Leo. Sort of easing things here, bringing relationships into it. This is a really interesting aspect. In some ways, you might look at a Mars-Chiron opposition, and it does signify that there can be some tension there. But it also signifies the potential for healing. And then with Venus coming in as well, and the retrograde nature of Chiron, I feel like there's a lot of potential this week for a little bit of reflection, some healing through relationship, maybe even some real joy. It is interesting to think about, since 2018, what Chiron has been working through with Aries. You know, I think that there's a way in which, especially when we had the nodes working through, the North Node working through the sign of Aries before it moved on to Pisces. So the last couple of years in 2024 and 2023, we had those nodes in Aries. And really 2024, late 2023. Yeah. And I think that there's been so much work in terms of getting in touch with our own individual selves, our unique desires, our who we really are, our expression in the world, separating what society wants for us, what we were taught we should want, from what we really want, separating out what we thought would get us approval from family or friends, from who we are and where we really are now. There's also something about confidence with Aries. I've seen this show up for people kind of needing to find their confidence and finding it, or being on the path toward finding more and more of it, which sometimes means lacking it for a minute as you're on the way. But yeah, you know, Aries is, Chiron and Aries helps us learn how to be ourselves, how to want what we want, how to not be about pleasing others, how to stand confidently in our own bold self-expression. And um, Aries doesn't need to have everything figured out. Aries is just excited to get started. I think that we've been working with a bit of that energy as well. And then with Mars in Libra here, this is an interesting signature, much more short-lived, just a few weeks that we've been working with this, but Mars actually does a lot better in his home sign of Aries, where he can act in that Aries way that I just spoke about, right? Where he can, when Mars is in Aries, we can take action very quickly. We don't need other people's approval. We feel confident. We feel motivated, energized, ready to go. Mars is just energy and momentum as well. So Mars in Libra kind of isn't loving that signature in some ways because it's much more relational. But for this aspect today, and I don't mind Mars in Libra. I think there's more to it than that. But just to sort of explain the signature, Mars does like to move and move ahead. And so it signifies for us when Mars is in Libra that it's a time when we kind of have to slow down a little bit and think about what other people, how this is working for other people. Um, it may be that slowing down helps us with that because that's part of what they want, these other people, is for us to slow down a little bit. Or it helps us get in touch with um, not just our perspective, but the collective perspective. Mars in Libra is sort of sitting down to have a discussion with everybody and see where everybody's coming from. And so I do think that an opposition with Chiron, Mars can sort of borrow the energy a little bit from that Aries signature. And I think that that's helpful, even though we're talking about an opposition. Another thing about Mars and Libra that I love is that it signifies a way in which we're willing to fight for peace, which is sort of an oxymoron, right? We, uh, going to war for peace, but no, but really just holding that value super sacred of understanding how important it is to be peaceful, how important it is to feel harmonious and grounded and good. And that's part of this healing journey as well, is Mars just making that conscious decision to choose peace over war, to choose harmony over being out of alignment. And there's something about the healing work that Chiron's done, I think as we've learned how to be our own unique selves, have that confidence, Mars and Libra can kind of borrow from that when trying to prioritize peace and harmony. It's like how when you're happy, you can let things go more easily. You know, Sometimes when someone makes a big deal over something small, it's like, well, if you were happy, I'm pretty sure you would this wouldn't really be such a huge issue, you know? Um, and there's something about this aspect that kind of reminds me of that, like finding that peace where if we feel strong enough and we feel good enough, then um, we show up to places as our best selves, as our bold selves, more often at least, right? Because none of us are perfect. And part of what we're working through with the South Node in Virgo is this idea of releasing perfectionism, releasing overdoing, over planning, overthinking, overscheduling, being too critical of ourselves and of others, being too hard on ourselves, being too hard on others. And so, something about all these practices has led us to this point this week in the middle of these eclipses where probably it's pretty busy and there's a lot going on and there's changes and things moving and happening where we can choose that peace, that harmony from a place of understanding its importance, from a place of valuing ourselves enough that we don't let our peace be disturbed. Um, we put that first because we know it will help us put our best foot forward in all kinds of different ways. It's also cool to mention Venus here in Leo. I mentioned before that I really like Venus in Leo, and I do. It's very creative. Uh, and I just feel like it adds, the fact that Venus is here adds sort of a lightness and a levity to everything that I was just speaking about. You know, as good as all that is, there, it's a little heavy. And I feel like Venus is lightening that up, especially Venus and Leo, because there is sort of like a flirtatious, fun loving nature to Venus and Leo. I think Venus and Leo is sort of the most charming of the Venus signatures, the most flirty, um, attractive as well. There's a warmth, a playfulness. Um, and it's almost like that can be medicine too, you know, the playfulness, the happiness, the joyfulness, adding that to this wedge pattern, adding that to this triangle that we're working with, this Mars Chiron opposition with this Venus aspect here. Um, yeah, we can prioritize harmony, and we can also prioritize play and joy. Um, I remember when I was writing my horoscopes for this month, when I was filming my horoscopes for this month and writing the outline, thinking about how I think sometimes we can think that we learn hard lessons through hard things, through going through hard things. You know, if you've lived long enough, you can see that you've probably, as much as a hard time can be really challenging, you do learn a lot from it. And you may even remind yourself of that when moving through something difficult. Well, you know, I'm really living here. I'm learning and I'm growing. And I know that in the past when I went through something hard, I grew. So this will be that way too in the end, as hard as this is. Um, but I think it's also really good to remember, and Venus and Leo reminds us of this, that growing doesn't always have to be hard. We don't always have to learn and grow through something being hard. We can learn and grow through joyful experiences too, through happy experiences, through positive relationships, you know? And so I think that there's something with this aspect where that's the case as well, sort of adding that in here, you know? Look at your relationships this week because they can be mirrors a little bit of where you are with some of these processes. You know, is where are you in this sort of growth timeline here of prioritizing that peace and joy, finding that happiness. And let me just say, like, I am not perfect at any, it's not even that I'm not perfect. I'm not great at a lot of this. You know, I find myself stepping over into error with this kind of thing all the time. And I'm really just looking at the astrology and reading these different signatures. I'm not speaking from some place of mastery myself. You know, sometimes Mars opposed Chiron can show up as an opposition with a person, can show up as a difficulty, like a challenging conversation or some kind of difficulty and challenge. And we can choose in that moment to be reactive or responsive, right? And I do choose reactivity sometimes. I definitely do. And I am trying to release the self-criticism and the perfectionism, but I don't know why I wanted to say that. I guess when I was saying relationships are mirrors, I don't mean any of this in sort of a lectury way. And I'm also talking to myself. I will be looking this week at the relationships around me and what they're telling me about how I'm showing up, because how we show up has a huge impact on the people around us. And it's not everything. Everybody has their own sovereignty as well and their own mind that they're working with. But there's something to note there. I think that there really is the potential for healing here and for yeah, for healing something from the past. You know, if anything does pop up, the way that we meet it can actually not just shift the now, but it can almost shift the past a little bit too. Um, and something could get a little pinged this week. Something could get a little stirred up. And that's true as well because we're in eclipse season. And this is why I'm saying that it's finding peace. We have to find this peace. We have to work with a sextile. This kind of thing doesn't just happen to us. This is an active thing that we have to use because the Mars Chiron opposition could show up as a little bit difficult or challenging. There is a very diplomatic edge to this, sort of a we mentality rather than a me mentality, challenging old ways of doing things, even old things that we used to think were wisdom, breaking that down, allowing it to go. Interdependence over codependence, right? Choosing interdependence over codependence, everybody being complete and then coming to relationship from that place rather than leaning on each other. But also everyone being complete enough to realize that they need help sometimes and that we can't do it all alone, and being able to be in relationship and reach out for help and togetherness. Yeah, there's really an opportunity to celebrate here. There's an opportunity for rewriting old stories and healing things from the past. There could even be apologies or just different ways of doing things. And we're still in the middle of the eclipse cycle. So it might be a busy week, as it is for me. So I'm probably not going to stay on too long today. I do usually put a Q&A at the end, but I don't see any questions today, and I might just skip that because, yeah, true to the eclipse season, it's been a busy time. But I talk about this in the horoscopes for September. If you enjoyed this video, you would likely enjoy that too. You can see that on my channel. And I will also attach some other videos here about eclipses, this current eclipse cycle, astrology videos that are relevant for right now. You would probably enjoy those if you enjoyed this. And I will be back on Friday and we can talk about the eclipse coming up in Virgo then. So thank you very much for being here. Sorry to be a little bit rushed, and I'm going to try to choose peace and harmony myself this week. Wishing you luck, wishing myself luck. And thank you so much for being here. Have a great week.